What is up, all you beautiful, free-minded, free-thinking people? I hope you're having an amazing day so far. Really quick, I just wanted to thank all of our sponsors, all the companies that make this show possible. First off, Good Habits Coffee Company. Guys, you need to check them out if you enjoy good coffee. Good Habits is all about selecting the highest quality beans. They only use grade A beans. A lot of companies, the big companies you're familiar with, don't even do that, all right? They use grade B beans. They process them in a way that maximizes freshness and still is friendly to the earth and the environment. Good Habits is all about helping you become the best version of yourself. You guys have probably heard me say it a million times if you've listened to my content over the years. You are your habits. That's why I love the name of this company, Good Habits Coffee. Discipline is far more important than motivation, and discipline is all about cultivating good habits. Good Habits is all about making good coffee for driven people. And I know that's you. That's my listeners. If you care about having a strong body and a free mind, which is what I'm all about here, you're going to like Good Habits Coffee. You can use code HURT at checkout to save some moolah. That's H-U-R-T, my last name. And if you do, let me know what you think, guys. I'm telling you, it's my favorite coffee I've ever had. I love it. Everything comes shipped whole bean because that maximizes freshness. They roast twice a week. So you're never getting something shipped that wasn't roasted within the last couple days. So check them out, Good Habits Coffee Company. Next, justworkco.com. All started with this shirt that I just held up here on the video version, the Free Mind t-shirt. Of course, the namesake of this podcast. Any apparel you purchase at justworkco.com directly supports our efforts here on the show. So check it out. We have a number of designs, a number of colors. You guys have seen me wear all of our shirts here on the show at different times. We have the Free Mind one I just showed you, the Question Everything shirt, which is very popular these days, especially when questioning is frowned upon. We have to push back against that stuff. Next, the Just Work shirt that I'm wearing right now says Just Work, period, across the front. Who can't get behind that? And lastly, the Sovereign t-shirt, which is probably my favorite now because sovereign means you're not controlled by another. And that's what we're all about. Strong body, free mind. Check us out, justworkco.com. Again, support the show if you want by wearing one of our shirts. Lastly, First Phorm, the only supplements I put in my body. I have used exclusively First Phorm supplements for the last 4 years, and I have nothing but good things to say about the products and the company. The highest quality standards. The company stands up for what's right in an age of corporate wokeism. First Phorm goes against the grain. Firstphorm.com/hurt will get you free shipping on any products you want shipped to you in the continental U.S. Again, only supplements I use. I can't say enough good things about them. If you have any questions about supplements, which ones to get, which ones suit your needs, hit me up, shoot me a message, comment below, whatever you want to do. You can find me on all the socials, and I will help you out because I absolutely love this company and what it stands for. It's when I was doing a lot of nutrition coaching, it's the only supplements I recommended to my clients because I knew we would get results. Firstphorm.com/hurt. All right, that is enough chit chat. Let's get into this episode. Welcome back to another episode of Free Mind Podcast. Folks, I am very excited because today I am joined by two awesome guests. And before we jump in and do intros for each of these individuals, I just want y'all to know that part of what I'm trying to do this year is showcase folks who are regular people, not everyday career politician types, but regular people coming from various backgrounds running for office. And so it's my great pleasure to have both of these individuals on, Tony Cowden and Adina Safta, both running for office in the state of North Carolina, my native state. And let's get this thing started. Tony, if you want to do your quick little intro, and then we'll kick it over to Adina.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I am Tony Cowden. I'm running for U.S. House of Representatives.
We're going to talk about that specifically.
Right, why I place the emphasis on representative. In North Carolina's 3rd Congressional District, which is most of Eastern North Carolina now. I'm a veteran, a small business owner, just a normal guy trying to not pay so many taxes so they continue to waste our money. And more so, I'm just fed up. And when I say I'm fed up with their horse shit. I'm fed up with the horse shit that is the people who are supposed to represent us. And apologies for using, a swear word, but I have yet to discover a synonym for that word that's applicable to our current situation.
Well, it's pretty accurate.
It is.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah. Whenever I use a curse word, I say it's my politically correct version of what I would say, because I feel like more often than not, in the situation that we're in and just the things that you see every day that you're like, whoa, another one, like I didn't even expect this coming. Like, it's like just when you think you've got it, you've got the main issues, you're going down the road, bam, like another one comes, and it's it's disappointing to see that the government that we, the people, have relied on for so long has failed us. But my introduction, so I'm running for U.S. House of Representatives as well in North Carolina's 2nd District, which is most of Wake County. I'm lucky that I only have one county or half a county. Unlike Tony, he's got several. I don't even know. But yeah, so I decided to run for U.S. Congress specifically because, again, U.S. Congress is the people's voice to the government. And I just felt that as a small business owner, as a CFO, financial expert during the pandemic, it was like the way U.S. Congress was handling our budgets, our spending bills, our debt ceiling, AOC, I wouldn't trust selling lemonade on the side of a road, never mind deciding on what, spending bills are getting approved. And I just felt like it wasn't so much what was best for the nation during a pandemic. It was more so what was best for their pockets, like the politicians. And so I feel like I've been a public servant my whole life because that's just what I've always known. I've always helped small businesses. I've always helped people in the community. And when I sat back and looked at what was happening, I was like, wait a minute, are these people public servants or are they politicians? And, I just saw that there was a lot of issues in that. And I'm a small business owner. I'm an immigrant that was born in a communist country and the year of the revolution. So I'm ready for war any day, any day and every day. So I'm excited to be running. I'm not a politician. I've never been in politics. And I feel like U.S. Congress is what could either save our nation from communism or bring it to a first class ticket to communism. So I think that this is our time to stand up for what should have been already the case.
Yeah. It's interesting. Every person I've met, and there have been quite a few now who were born or grew up in a communist country. So far, I haven't found a single one, or a socialist country. I haven't found a single one who
embraces it,
wants to do socialism here. It's funny. They came here because
freedom.
It's not socialism.
And they're absolutely horrified at the parallels. I have 2 good friends from Venezuela, and they're horrified. And then when they start drawing out the parallels, you understand why. And of course, so many people, but that won't happen here, right? Because that's American arrogance. We think we are somehow immune from the rules of nature and human nature. No, that's the problem, is our arrogance allows us to believe that we're able to somehow remain immune from other, like I said, very natural pathways that societies and cultures and countries often go down. And, that's one of my biggest frustrations is Venezuela, one of the wealthiest countries on the planet.
Not long ago.
Right, just a few years ago. Yeah. And still sitting on more oil than they know what to do with. Of course, we're trying to now negotiate with a dictator in Venezuela for their oil.
Anyway, when we can drill our own.
When we could have our own. But backing up, Venezuela happened right underneath our noses. They're one of our Western Hemisphere, one of our southern neighbors. And, it happened while we were busy in the Middle East. I was literally busy in the Middle East. But our country's focus was on 2 very long, drawn-out wars that should have only taken a few months, that really only took a few months, but then we drug them out. Who knows why? Well,
I got a pretty good idea.
I think we all have
Yeah.
a pretty good idea.
Most of us do.
War makes, companies money, and it always has, right? Like, I mean, that was the point of war, typically speaking, and historically, was for defense of a nation or expansion of an empire, and gaining territories and riches. But we're not even good at that, right? We go and, we were going to try to spread democracy to people who don't really care about the things we care about. Their cultures are different than ours, so they value different things, but we're horrible at that type of assessment as well.
Well, that's another example of that American exceptionalism, thinking that we know what's best and we know what's right.
Yeah, like in Afghanistan, you got a farmer, and the farmer's son's going to be a farmer, and his son's going to be a farmer. Well, in America, right, we have this idea that, a farmer's going to raise a son to go to college. Mm-hmm. And that's just not, it is a very much a pride thing in Afghanistan that your son, to be the son that follows his father, right, and so on and so forth. So we're trying to impose a set of social means and norms on a culture and a society that just don't value the same things we do.
I feel like that's showing the not American dream, but more so, instead of taking over legacies, leaving legacies behind, diminishing the traditional family values and almost making it as if it's a bad thing to take over your father's, farm and business, and that you have to go to college and have student debt and no job after. That is the American dream, and that is not the American dream in reality, but that is what we've been taught as the American dream.
Yeah. When you look at, just look at like what built this country. It wasn't kids going to college and getting 9-to-5 jobs. No. It's just like, and I do think that there's been a swing in maybe the last half decade or so of folks realizing, just because I have my own thoughts on college, did too much of it. And
do you think AOC should have her $17,000 student debt just waived? And
I think a lot of things about AOC.
Yeah. Oh, I'm just checking you.
But what did she say? It's just because I want to sleep with her or something, right? Like she said all her haters.
Yeah, her haters say, I'm like,
oh boy, don't flatter yourself there, girl.
Yeah.
I'm just jealous that she's taking all the Republican men. I'm like, what am I left with?
We're like, to circle back to Venezuela, right? Like, I often like to bring up the Monroe Doctrine. Mm-hmm. The whole idea of protecting the Western Hemisphere, building a Western Hemisphere of neighbors that of mutualistic support. But instead, we decided NATO was more important, the EU was more important, and the Middle East was more important. I keep saying it over and over again. Had we adhered to the Monroe Doctrine, we could have invested in our southern neighbors. Instead of iPhones being made in China, they could be made in El Salvador or other country that we helped stabilize and invest in. And when I say invest, I mean it in the absolute real term, not like politicians. They say we're going to invest in something. They mean they're just going to waste our money.
Throw money away.
No, I mean when business people, right, especially a small business person who can't afford to waste money, right, we invest in things. We have to do an assessment and have a return on investment, right? Like as a small business owner, you can't be like, oh, I'm going to spend $2,000 on that, and it turns around the next day, it gives you nothing back, and it's only worth $4.
Right.
That's how the government does it, right?
Yeah,
and they call it capitalism. That is not capitalism.
Right.
Well, and if we did invest in our southern neighbors, maybe we wouldn't have the problem we have now of 2,000 people a day flooding over the border in
illegal
certain
immigration.
locations.
And that's I constantly go back to that when I'm talking to folks. Is like, one of my biggest frustrations is, as we were talking before we came online, is that I'm not even mad at the left, right? The liberals, the Democrats, whatever we want to label them as, right? Because they're at least straight up with us. It's the fraudulent conservatives, right? They're saying conservatives haven't conserved a damn thing in the last 80 years, right? Why? Because are they even really Republicans? Are they even really conservatives, right? So those are the folks that I'm pissed off at. They're the ones that bent over or laid down and compromised our rights to the left every step of the way. And now we're calling them rhinos. I call them fakes and frauds, right? We don't need an acronym for those two words.
Right. Yeah.
But, it's one of the biggest things that politicians, I don't use that word kindly, they always have one-line solutions. Hey, what's your thought on illegal immigration? Build a wall. And I'm over here going, and then what?
Right.
Exactly.
Because a wall is not a solution to the very complex problem of illegal immigration. It's a security measure. That's not a solution to the problem. Again, the Monroe Doctrine, that's how you solve illegal immigration. You completely solve the problem by reducing the demand, the desire to come here, because now their homes are awesome. And that bolsters a world economy. That creates so many opportunities for so many people. That creates opportunities for Americans to invest in our friendly neighbors instead of, well, China's really cheap, I guess we can go there.
Right.
No, like I said, we have so many amazing southern neighbors with beautiful countries, beautiful land, tourist attractions or potential tourist attractions.
Yeah, I was gonna say, shit, man. I'll go live in paradise. Like,
right.
And that's a great point, because I often wonder, coming from my background is in science and engineering, and we always talk about first principles or root cause. What is the root cause of the problem? Like,
You have to identify that if you're going to solve the problem.
Exactly. And that's more often than not, it seems like that is completely absent from the conversation in our modern day politics in America. It's like we don't want to talk about how do we make things better in those countries, since we're already spending an ass load of money.
If you ever get an opportunity to pin a politician into a corner, back him into the corner, or back her in the corner, they're going to be like, well, you don't understand the big picture, and it's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, but the status quo and continuing to do things and operating within the parameter of a historic system that is failing, that is not working the way our founding fathers intended, that's being exploited by politicians for their own self-gain instead of representing people, right? Yep. That's the insanity. Big problem. And it is so frustrating because, before, just a few months ago, I had zero desire, inclination, motivation to get involved in politics.
That's the kind of people we want to run there.
Yeah.
I want people running for office who don't want to do it.
People,
it wasn't on our 5-year plan. Like, in 5 years, I'm going to run for political.
You felt like you needed to step in and solve a problem.
And I tell you, man, it is, every day I learn something new that disgusts me. And that exact same thing, in some ways you're just like, man, I don't know if we can fix this. It's so deeply entrenched. Mm-hmm. It's all the way down to the local GOPs. It's an entrenched way of thinking. It's an entrenched way of doing things.
It's accepted,
right? And even the folks who want to switch it, they don't want to change things. But they say they want to do things differently. I'm like, well, you're going to have to fundamentally change the way we approach these things, the organization, and the way the Republican Party operates, right?
Yeah.
And it's so frustrating because you'll hear it all the time. Well, you're as a local member of the GOP, I have to remain neutral in a primary.
I can't do anything for the primary.
And then they go behind and on the in the background they do stuff and things to support. And I'll tell you very much. Clearly I am challenging an incumbent. I'm challenging incumbent Greg Murphy.
I feel like I am too, but I'm not.
Well, you're challenging, an incumbent Democrat, than
they do me. I mean, literally, the media supports her more than me, and it's like
your case with the Republicans is they abandoned that district as unwinnable by Republicans.
The most important district in the whole state.
It's what we've done nationwide with like California,
right? We just it's lost.
A lot of people think they're throwing their vote away if they vote.
It's like the leader in our state. We'll just let it go.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Adina's running, her district, like you said, Wake County, right? That's the capital. You would think Republicans would put forth all the effort of unseating a Democrat,
especially when they have a great candidate. And they have a candidate that's willing to run, is willing to jump into the fire. You would think they would embrace that and say, "Oh my gosh, like thank God, like let's support her, let's help her." No, it's like, no, Deborah's going to win. You have no chance, and I'm like, AOC is not going to win. Like. I'm going to win.
So that's been essentially the response you've gotten from
everybody,
Republicans?
Yep. And also, like, even the media, like, I won't name them, but, there's one that released an article, and it was like, it almost, like, I know my value going into this, right? Like, we know we're going into this losing a lot, right? We're not going in gaining this political, like, whatever job. So for me, it's like, I know my value before I was in this political race, and coming into it, I'm not willing to watch other media outlets almost diminish it, right? By saying like this one article, it was basically saying that whoever's running against her is just not a political person. Clearly, they have no clue what they're doing because Deborah's going to win. Right. And so I reached out to somebody that was in that that works for the company, and I said, hey, I know you wanted to do an article on me, but I'm going to have to pass. Unless your company is willing to literally release an apology statement, apologizing to me and the other bold candidates that are business owners that have grit, that it is what we need in this nation, especially in the state, in order to defeat these rhinos and communists. Unless they release an apology like article, I refuse to be publicized by you. So I will pass, because I know the day will come when you're going to knock on my door, and I will have you talk to my assistant, the one that doesn't exist.
Yeah, it's even more frustrating. Like you can kind of accept the fact that you're getting a lot of pushback from a liberal media challenging a Democrat. Well, I'm challenging a Republican incumbent that votes more like a Democrat. And the pushback, the lack of support, the system is definitely designed to protect incumbents. The GOP will protect incumbents, and it doesn't mean you would think they would protect the ones that are truly conservative. No. They just, out of the way the system is and the way it has developed, and I don't even think it's not rigged. It's just the way it developed, and I think it developed.
And how far it's gone.
Well, yeah, I think in the natural evolution of things, it developed to protect incumbents against the other party. But what it has done is developed a system that protects them against anyone and everyone. And that's not the way the system was intended to work. The system is not supposed to protect a Republican incumbent or a Democrat incumbent from challengers of the same party.
Right.
But Lord knows that is very much the case. I had some really, really cool support coming from D.C. The districts change, right? Initially, I was running in the 4th where I live, and I think it's important to run in the district that you live in.
Yes, amen.
A lot of people don't think that. It's not a lot of when you tell North Carolinians that their representative doesn't have to live in their district, they're like, what? Because that's sheriffs. Ridiculous. Right,
you're
sheriffs.
A public servant. How are you a servant?
Yeah. And again, that's the system looking out for itself. It created that to give that mobility to especially like sitting NC House members and stuff like that who want to step up to the federal level or whatever. And you know what? In a lot of ways, there's that's good looking out, but it's looking out for politicians,
not the people.
It's not looking out for the people.
Right.
So it's frustrating. And I get it. You go on the football field, you play football. If you go on the football field and try to play baseball, you're going to get crushed, right? So you got to understand that the rules as they exist today, you have to kind of play by them.
So why did North Carolina redistrict?
Okay, yeah. So, we had 13 districts. We gained population.
Okay.
So other states lost population, like California and Oregon, New York, Washington. People
wonder what those states have in common.
Right. And I'll tell you, a lot of folks from Jersey, Connecticut, New York moved to North Carolina.
Right. Because
it's not always the Democrats moving from up north. Because I think that's a perception that I feel like the government wants us to have that perception. Mm-hmm. But I tell people, because I see it like always on my comments, like, well, Raleigh's so Democrat because all the Northerners. And I'm like, well, I'm a Northerner and I was a Republican there and I'm a Republican here. And I think the government wants you to think that to, again, get distracted while Silicon Valley over here is bringing Apple and they're bringing in their people from California or whatever. Right. But I think like what's important to know is the people that are saturating our party and like, the Democrats are not the Northerners. The Northerners that are coming down here are good conservatives, most of them. And yeah, you're going to get some that are liberal and they're just confused and they think they're running from taxes and then they want like they just don't know what they want really. But the majority are not.
I found Democrats. The same thing. Quite some of the most active people in North Carolina Republican politics and the GOP and the Republican Party are folks from up north who were absolutely disgusted by what they experienced up there, and they came down here, and they don't want it to change.
Right.
Growing up in Pamlico County, same type of thing. Oh, these Yankees keep, that was how we talked as locals.
I heard
right?
it constantly.
You heard it growing up out there as
Yep.
well, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And what I'm finding is simply not the case.
Yep.
The folks who are moving down from New York, man, they're joining your local party. They're the folks who are really active.
Yep.
And, you know, that's been a parallel thing of mine, is trying to educate people as I learn, because being very much not a politically minded person before everything got a little chaotic a couple of years ago, I wasn't very involved. I wasn't involved at all, right? I was involved in deploying, doing my job. Like most Americans, do your job, go home, take care of your family, and assume the people you voted to represent you are in D.C. doing that.
Right. And I think that the mainstream media and politicians take advantage of that fact that
yeah.
most of us are just trying to live our lives.
Bro,
Yeah.
it is by design. As I have progressed through this, it is by design. It is so difficult. The system is so complex to track. Like, you try to look up your representatives voting, right? And they're like, well, they voted for this, but, you know, did they vote for it? But there was 4 bills inside that one mega bill, and you know, the congressional website is difficult to navigate.
And you would think those websites would be so good because we pay so much in taxes. Like, where are they putting all this money? Like,
Right.
why are these things not seamless for
Yeah.
every citizen to get to and know and understand
Right.
what is going on?
It's on purpose.
It gets frustrating.
Yeah.
It gets so frustrating. I'll try to do my own research and looking at things and all over the internet, and finally, like, you know what? I'm going to call somebody and see if they know where to find this
So
information.
can you imagine just like a regular citizen
Right.
just wanting to
somebody
know?
who's
Yeah.
not motivated like us?
I have a podcast where I talk about this stuff,
Yeah.
and like this is like all I'm doing. And like I can't imagine being like me 5-10 years ago, just trying to run my business, like
Right.
turn on with whatever Fox, CNN, MSNBC,
Also be your own CFO and
Right.
everything else, and it's
Yeah.
like I get 15 minutes to see what's going on in the world. And
Right.
these days, you know that's not true.
But
Well-
see, I think that was part of the plan because I feel like we've been almost conditioned, all of us, right? When people ask me about term limits, I respond with accountability. Like, we've created such a hype around the president and, you know, the presidential election, the vice president, etc. But how many times did you vote for your Congress, man or woman, and for your Senate, and then went back and checked to see their work?
Yeah,
I know,
or,
I never
or your
did.
school board,
Right,
or your
right.
city council,
We
or-
never
They-
hold them accountable. There's no process to say, hey, you like promised these things, 1 year review. Like, where are you? Like, here's your scorecard.
Right.
There needs to be accountability.
The cool thing is there is now organizations who are scoring them, right? Like my incumbent.
Liberty.
Yeah.
But
you
no
know,
one's going in there.
Right.
Like, you're fired.
Yeah, you know, there are these different websites, and you know, like my opponent, Greg, his score is a C, less than what 70% or whatever.
C for cat.
Yeah, he's done horribly in his voting record. He made all these promises. He wanted to be part of the Freedom Caucus, got their support, got elected, dumped them, and then, you know, talked about, you know, Eastern North Carolina, it's agriculture and military. You know, wanted to be part of the, you know, said out loud publicly, I want to be part of the Veterans Affairs Committee. As soon as he got to D.C., he started maneuvering to become part of the Ways and Means Committee, you know, which everyone knows is where people go to exploit a system and get rich.
Money. and
It's
power.
yeah, you know, that old saying, follow the money. We always say it,
Yeah.
but nobody does. And yeah, you know,
Except for me.
it is frustrating that, you know, the system, and I'm not complaining. Lord knows I'm not of the victim mindset. The parallel that I began to reference a few minutes ago is in my campaign, as I learn stuff, I'm trying to put out information that educates the voters.
Yeah.
I am constantly, even before I decided to run, I stood up a C4 to help support veterans running for office. And of course, I left it, handed it over to some really good friends of mine. They're running the show on it. It's called American Oath Initiative.
Yes.
So I should plug that real quick.
Yeah, for
They're
sure.
doing great. And they're located right there. All of them are, you know, there's SF guys, Marines, a Navy SEAL, you know, the whole gambit of, you know, the who's who in that zoo are on that and involved in that organization. And they're right out of Onslow County there with Marines and MARSOC, you know, Camp Lejeune, which
Yep.
is in my district. And so, yeah, they're doing great stuff. So I did that. I was trying to get involved, and I was having to learn all these things. And as I learned them, I would try to share them with people. And, you know, of course, a lot of young folks in America, you know, when you tell them, hey, you got to get out and vote, get involved, you know, volunteer to be a poll watcher. North Carolina is requesting 15,000 people to go watch the polls so we don't have the fraud that we've had. So I've been trying to educate people. So when I'm talking to people about the corruption, or at least the difficulties, the protection of incumbents, I'm not whining, right? I'm clearly challenging an incumbent, and I'm all about it.
Right.
But people need to understand the friction that I'm experiencing. I want them to understand it.
Well, they have the right to know about that stuff.
Right,
like,
right.
You know.
And if you're not involved in the local GOP, you won't get exposed to this stuff.
Right.
I mean, a good example, right? PACs and money, an incumbent's going to have, on average, $1 million or more to spend on advertisement and so on and so forth. And if they don't have a serious competitor, they don't have to spend much. So they keep building it. Well, I think a lot of folks don't realize is that a campaign can donate to another campaign. And that's how you start to secure whatever seat on whatever committee you want, Right, yeah. It's like, I can't give you, if we're, all three of us are representatives, I can't give you money, but my campaign can give your campaign money. My PAC can give your PAC money, right? And, so in times like these, somebody like us, fundraising is almost impossible. Because why? Inflation's through the roof. Do you think people have extra money
We have
right
integrity,
now?
so.
Right.
Yeah. The PAC thing for me has always been like, do you honestly expect that candidate, once they get in office, they're not beholden to whatever company was contributing to that PAC?
And honestly, what I think like the misperception, like people don't understand this, and I'm the same way. Like I try to educate people as much as I can, because the last thing that I want is for somebody to donate $20 and not understand what the $20 is for.
Right.
But I think the perception that people have is like, oh, she's running for political office, she must have millions of dollars. And it's like, no, actually, I'm not political, so I don't have millions of dollars. Because when you first get into the race, it's like, who has the most money? And I'm like, wait, what am I running for? Am I running for like, who can get the most donations? Like, this is not why I'm doing this. And a lot of the money, like, I follow the money. I'm a CFO, and I looked at people's financials, everyone, including Deborah Ross. And I'm like, well, she's paying $30 service fee to Bank of America. That's weird. That's literally like someone's like money, hard-earned money, and you're raising $1 million, and you don't really care about the $30 you pay a month. So you can't manage your own funds, but you should manage ours. And so, like, I follow the money and I look to see. And a majority of these people, I mean, like, the percentages that you see on things being spent, that it's like, if you actually had a budget going into this, you can run a campaign with a fourth of what you're running it with. You can spend the money in places that are, like, more effective and keep them here, not in D.C., because a lot of times the companies that they're affiliated with are back in D.C. So it's like, are you really raising that much, or is it just like an inflated number to make you look good? And for me, it's like, if you are allowing yourself to literally be bought during your campaign, we don't need to worry about when you get to office, because you're already bought. And whoever just bought you is who's going to run the show. So a lot of times the issue is that on the other side, conservatives, they're like, well, in order for me to talk to you, you have to have $1 million. And it's like, so you want me to be bought before you talk to me? Okay. And nobody breaks it down, where I'm like, well, wait a minute. Here's what happens when that happens.
Right.
When that happens, you no longer have any say. It's like, I look at the campaigns as a DBA of America, right? Like our country is a corporation, and we're doing business as we're just a small business of it, right? When we run these campaigns, and every investor has a say, right? And why would you want 1 million investors when you can have quality, not quantity investors? And then it's like less hands in the pot, right? But we're allowing all these investors. It's like, if you're running a small business, would you just let anybody invest just because they're, writing you a check? No. You care about your brand. Right. But like in campaigns, like I care about my brand and I care about the people's voice, and I'm not going to allow anybody to donate. I will refund money to anyone that we don't believe in. We're not going to take donations from Soros, not that he would ever want to donate to my campaign.
And that's the difference between a small business owner and a politician.
Mm-hmm.
She referenced a $30 charge to a bank account. Well, that's a big deal, right? I'm always trying to make sure I've got that free account. Keep your balance above this certain level so you don't pay that $14 fee. I don't want to pay an extra fee, right? But that's the difference between a fiscally responsible
capitalist.
Or just somebody has to watch their money. Well, what happens with politicians is they're not playing with their money anymore. They're just playing with other people's money. That was a huge deal to me. I raised some good money over Christmas. In 13, 14 days, we raised like 130
Santa was good
grand.
to you, not me.
Yeah. You know, and you know, folks would DM me or message me and say, I gave you $10. That's all I got. I wished I could give you more. And I would say, hey, man.
Yeah, all you got is all you got.
Thank you so much.
Right.
Yeah. You know, it's the donor, not the donation.
Right.
And I promise you I will not waste your money. And you can look at, you know, and this is another educational thing. Americans don't know, on average, I didn't at least, that you can look up every penny that comes into my campaign.
And I never knew that
every
until I
penny
started
that
running.
goes out, right? I wouldn't have known.
It's public.
And again, I think most politicians don't want you to know.
Course, yeah.
So how have they hit it so well? It's public, and we, the citizens, never knew, so we never checked.
You want to know who donates to what? You can go to opensecrets.org. And
follow
look
the
it up.
money.
Yeah, and you can look it up, and you can see. And you know...
And you can see that Deborah Ross took $2,000 from the CRT lovers.
Yeah, right. So you got to be careful.
That's constitutional
with all that
restoration training, though.
Well, I take the money from the Constitution. She takes it from the other CRT.
It's just, it's absolutely frustrating learning these things. And, you know, somebody tried to check me a little bit yesterday. I was on with a radio show, and the host, I referred to it as corporate interference in our election. And he was like, well, what do you mean? And I was like, well, an individual can give to a campaign with up to a maximum. There's a maximum. It's $2,900 or $5,800 for a household. And that's it. You're done. You've capped out.
So households listening contribute to the funds of these two individuals.
Yeah.
And also, too, companies can't donate. I've had so many small businesses want to donate with their small businesses. So, it has to be an individual.
You know, as a politician, I can tell you, well, only individuals, not corporations, can donate to my campaign. And that sounds awesome, doesn't it? Right? American regular person's like, oh, okay, cool. You just satisfied me. I'm done with this conversation.
Right.
But they don't know the next question. And the next question
is,
tax
deductible.
How is it possible for corporations to influence and interfere with elections? Well, here's how. Thank you for asking. The PACs, your political action committees, they're set up. They are gross. Nonprofit, in theory, entities, legal entities, where companies, corporations can donate, and then that PAC can support your campaign. Not directly.
So dark money goes into PAC first.
And right. So C4s, that's where your dark money, you've heard that term. Yeah. So corporations can donate anonymously. Well, individuals can donate anonymously too, right? So in what's called like super PACs and all that, it's a different entity, and those donations are public. But even still, right? Like Amazon could donate to American Oath Initiative and ask them to earmark $1 million to my campaign. Well, you mean to tell me I go from $200,000 in my campaign account to $1 million? I'm not all of a sudden a different candidate? Right. Absolutely. I can now saturate the airwaves.
And you're not bought? What?
Right. You are bought.
And then when you get into office, who's going to be the first one to come see you?
First knock on the door will be the lobbyist from that industry.
And absolutely. I would rather have a campaign with 100,000 than 1,100,000 because like that irks me. So, I mean, I went back and I went on Open Secrets and there's a few other websites and I followed the money, and you have to dig so deep to see like what these PACs are, what they stand for, who supports the PACs. Like you can find out who their investors are. Right. And it's like, it's sick. Like for me, why do we need, I don't remember the number, but the amount of money that goes into congressional campaigns per year. And here's the thing, like, once you're in the seat, right?
Right.
You're in the seat, you're making $174,000 a year, and then you're running for office, and you're still raising millions of dollars. Like, I feel like what we're doing is we're replacing doing with money. Like, why are you not earning your position? Why do you need to raise so much money to win again? Because if you're doing your job in your district, which is not that hard if you're just working, then you shouldn't even have to raise money, honestly. But you're raising money because it's a front. It's a front. They're not doing their jobs. They're not the people's voice. And heck, they probably don't even know what their job description is. Most of them.
Well,
Deborah
and also,
does not.
Look, like $174,000 Just ask Dan Crenshaw. That's not enough. That's why you got to be able to invest in stocks. So
it's crazy.
It's funny.
Self-interest.
Fundraising. That is a metric that your campaign is often measured.
Well, and also fundraising is really important when you talk about the committees and everything once you're in.
Right. That's how you buy your way on the committees.
How good are you at fundraising?
I'll tell you straight up. I was having a conversation with a former cabinet member who has a huge PAC, and I was a sure-in for them to support me. And then I said, I'm challenging an incumbent. The first question was, well, how much money have you raised? Well, that's not enough.
Do you know my experience?
That is nowhere near enough, right? It had nothing to do with my background, whether or not I would do a good job, with the qualification. It boiled down to that I had not raised enough money for them to consider me a viable candidate to challenge an incumbent, right? And they didn't even ask about the incumbent and their voting record or their popularity. None of the dynamics that matter. It was just a metric, right? And we all know that metrics they're just the givens, right? Dynamics is what shape an equation and the outcome. And it was just so frustrating to have people, when I had no incumbent, to be, you're the best thing ever, to, you're challenging an incumbent, can't help you.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing is, too, it's like, okay,
so gross,
here's how I broke it down, because I met with some amazing, and again, like, I look at this like Tony does. Like, I don't look at it like negative, like, I'm not a victim. No one is. If you wake up in the United States with a citizenship and a pulse, you're not a victim, right?
Amen to that.
So the way that I look at it is, I feel like the reason I'm running is because of the opportunities that are, presented to fix stuff, right? And so we talk about it, but not from a negative standpoint. But I met with a few, larger donors, and that does come up where, like, how much did you raise? And I was like, I'm a CFO. I'm going to throw this out there. How many people have you invested in that raised a lot of money that failed you? Like 98% is usually the case. So I said, okay, so here, I'm going to give you a big risk. Invest in me. I may not be the number one, donation raiser, fundraiser, whatever, like, because I have integrity and because I understand, our economy and the situations that we're in right now, all of us, right? And so because of that, I might raise a fourth of what typically you would look for, but invest in me. I want to be the greatest risk you take and the best investment that you've ever made. And that's how you should rate the candidates, because we asked for this. We literally are the ones creating the problem, because if I'm sitting with you and I want America first, but I'm asking you first how much money you raised, I'm basically enabling a corrupt system.
Right.
So let's stop the corruption. Let's stop insanity. Because if we're going to do the same thing, if historically this happened, well, historically, Tony and I wouldn't run. So let's talk about today and why you should invest in something different than what you invested in for the last 40 years that's failed you.
If there was not a need
for
me to run, I wouldn't run. I would go on about my awesome life that I've worked really hard to create.
Same.
Right? My girlfriend and I, Melissa, and we have worked really hard over the last 10, almost 11 years. We bought an awesome piece of property outside of town because we were tired of living in a city. It came with donkeys and chickens and a pasture, and we got our dogs running around. We just had a pet deer.
We just got a deer. I was going to say.
We had a pet deer for a couple of days. Came around the corner last 2 Saturdays ago. My girlfriend, man, what an amazing person. Such a loving, caring person, but at the same time, a lot like me, who can be far more aggressive. She's super nice and caring and loving until she's not. But we come around the corner, she's a hunter, just like I am. She enjoys hunting. She enjoys the processing. She enjoys the fact that we don't eat processed meat at our house. We eat out of our freezers from animals that we hunted, that we knew their history, how they lived.
So if our supply chain cuts off, we go to Tony's house.
Yeah, I got freezers that are being held shut with cargo straps right now. But what an awesome person, right? We come around the corner the other night, and there's this yearling, probably just born last year, so he's 60, 70 pound little deer pup. And he's just sitting in the road. He had been hit. He was dazed and confused, and scuffed up. And scuffed up enough where it was like, if it had been me, I probably would have put him down and he'd have been dead. frankly. And she was like, I don't know. I don't feel like any of his wounds are life-threatening. Let's try to help him. Well, okay, and I named him. I got ahead of the
What's his
curve.
name?
I thought we would keep him forever, so I
What's
wanted
the
to name
name?
him Fred.
Oh.
So yesterday, Fred decided he no longer wanted to be in our backyard, and he made a break for the woods, and he's free now. And that was the thing. When we had him for 2 days, he wouldn't eat, so we gave him antibiotics and gave him formula, and then he started eating whole food. Now, he was just bruised up and hurt, right? And then he's like, nope, I'm out of here. I'm free. I'm good.
Thanks,
he
guys.
took off. So you know what? Wonderful stuff. And that's the cool things we have going on at our place. I built a range so I could develop my company. I sold the gym, just constantly trying to make my life better. And that requires a lot of hard work and attention.
Dude, why the hell are you running for office?
Well, again, there is a
Because
necessary...
we're going to have these things all eliminated if we don't fight for it.
And
Exactly.
I've promised people, right? So I will only do 4 terms. That's it.
I'm younger. I'll do 5.
Fair enough. In theory, we shouldn't need term limits because we can impose term limits. But the system has protected itself where incumbents get reelected. And that's why, if it wasn't for me, this incumbent who has, like I said, voted more with Democrats, voted for red flag laws, voted to expand the CDC and the vaccine passports. The list goes on and on and on of how many times he did not vote as a conservative that he promised that he was.
Right.
Right. He is the definition of rhino. Greg is the reason he and others like him are the reason that word even exists. Or
Why do your constituents keep electing him?
Well, so he hasn't been in very long. There was Walter B. Jones Jr. was our district, your family and my family's districts represented for a long time, and he was beloved. And man, he was the guy. God bless Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones every year would throw out legislation to force a recovery from Afghanistan and Iraq. He was the only one that was like, these wars are unconstitutional. We never declared war. We got to bring them back. He did it for years. Only one. He was the only one. And Walter B. Jones was a man of principle, right? So when he passed a couple of years ago, special election, and Greg Murphy was a North Carolina House General Assembly member. And even then, you can go all the way back and look at his voting record then. Even then, he was at best a moderate, right? A very left-leaning Republican, definitely not a conservative.
What's that?
Right? He voted to allow transgenders access into females' bathrooms, things like that.
Women to get drafted.
Yeah, women to get drafted. He did all kinds of things that conservative folks, hardworking conservative folks, just don't agree with.
So he was elected in a special election, and this was just his first term?
So he did the general election or the special election in 2019, and then, and then the election.
There's something common about that because so that happened with him, and Deborah just got. So George Holding was the representative before her, and he was a Republican. But there's this perception that like Wake County is dead and gone, like it's going to be the Democrats forever. But right before her, and so you just made me think of something like, how come the last election is what's determined the future of our districts? Because he's new, so has he proven himself? And she's new, she was in the Senate before. So really, it's like, what are they basing these facts on? If there was a Republican before her, I think
some of it is probably the very adamant demonization of Donald Trump in the mainstream media, and a lot of people vote emotionally and don't really do a lot of research. And so during that time, 2019, they're just like, I'm voting Democrat. I'm voting Democrat.
Well, but it's like you see the destruction, and you see like what's happened because we voted. Not we, they, or nobody really. Not a lot of people voted Democrat, but Joe figured it out how to get in. But we've seen what's happened with having those types of people in office. So it's like, okay, you see that. You see what happens when Republicans are not Republicans. They're not, they're their own version of conservative, right? Where it's like you lay down and you just are conservative. You don't speak. No, like you're supposed to be. We're the party of America first. We're the party of the fearless, bold. We stand up for what's right. How do you stand up for what's right when you're quiet? Like, I've not really ever seen that work out. And so I feel like, I don't even know.
Well, it's the America First thing that's an issue. And I think, I don't know if I was talking to a fellow who works here before you guys arrived, but I was like, these days wearing an American flag is almost looked at as like violent extremist, in our country.
It's only looked at by a very small amount of people, very vocal,
but
very
that gets
well
amplified,
media supported.
And media is what ruined it.
Media is the drama producing machine, right? I tell people all the time.
They're the Communist Party.
I took a break from media for like 2 years, man.
Wasn't it so good? I did too.
I bet your mental health was so much better, man.
The only access I had to any of the media, I would have to purposefully turn it on, whether on satellite radio in the vehicle or on my phone, because we don't have cable at my house.
I don't either.
I would have to put forth an effort, not just on click. There's Fox or CNN or whatever.
Right. Or if you're in the airport, you see.
Yeah,
CNN,
you know what I mean.
Communist national news.
I tell people, man, you want to break from it. Take a break from the mainstream media, the corporate media. Take a break from it. There are much better places to get news from. But
an encyclopedia.
Yeah, right.
A history.
Newspaper. The thing I like to point out to folks also when I talk about the education, trying to share people with things I knew, as I was reading things that our founding fathers wrote, and they didn't have Netflix and Fox News or CNN or anything to watch. So they wrote.
Yeah.
They wrote nonstop. They read things and they wrote things.
And they're archived. We can find a lot of the stuff.
Well, when they set up our government, the House of Representatives was modeled after the House of Commons in Britain, right? And they were trying to decide out, Parliament and how they were going to do it, line it out. And then, of course, our Senate, a lot of folks don't know our senators used to not be elected. They were appointed by the House. The Senate was supposed to be the elites, your lawyers, your doctors, your, well-to-do upper class, right? That's what it was designed. And then the House of Representatives, the much larger body, in our case, by double, was supposed to be regular people who would go and serve their communities and then go back home to their
under
farms.
8 years old.
Right. And it was their idea, the Founding Fathers never saw our system morphing and developing into what it is now, where it protects incumbents, and now they're in there for 30 years and so on and so forth. Right. And creates that term that we already said we wish or should not, let's stay away from wishing and hoping, should not exist. Career politician. That word should not exist in the United States.
Yeah,
exactly.
I always look at it personally as like serving your time, serving your country in that capacity and then moving on.
Military members, for the most part, right, 20 years. The military has a retirement age.
Yeah, it's weird that we don't have that.
Yeah, like how come there's no retirement age? Like, I mean, some of them are like 98, pushing 100.
I mean, if you can't legally operate a motor vehicle, you probably shouldn't be running. So probably Joe
right?
Like
be
if you're physically and mentally incapable of operating a motor vehicle, I'm going to say that should disqualify you from holding an office that runs the greatest nation on this planet.
Especially U.S. Congress. People don't understand, like, the U.S. Congress position, you can call war, like on our nation. Like, look at the people. They're incompetent. Like, they are not, at the end of the day, they're not qualified, just like the two primaries that are running against me right now. If you're not qualified, you should be, you shouldn't even get to, like, the votes. There should be a process where the GOP and the local groups between, like, when you decide you want to run, right? Because deciding to run, like, you have that freedom to do so. But then between that and, like, the primaries, there should be some sort of process where you're getting vetted, where you're getting asked questions, where the citizens can see more than your fake social media post to get to know who you are and if you're legitimate. And if you don't live in your district, tell me why you're a public servant. Tell me what you've done for this community that you want to represent this community, other than the fact that you might win because you were told so.
What you're saying there, Adina, is what the primary is for, to choose, for the folks to choose who go. Well,
so basically,
in theory,
their interview process is their social media. They don't have any legitimate information.
So the system has created something whereas the incumbent is so favored, not by the people, but by the system per se, sometimes by the people. Like I said, if I thought Greg Murphy was doing a good job.
Then you would run fair and square.
No, I wouldn't challenge him.
Wouldn't
Or
even
you
run.
would-
No, I
Yeah.
would support him. I would donate to him. I would volunteer
Yeah.
for him.
Personally, that's what I prefer.
Right.
I don't want to have to
I
go
would
do the
much
job.
rather, I
There's
would
just no
much
such
rather.
thing right now.
Right? There are, heck, Dr. Fox. She's been in Congress for a long time. She represents the northwestern northwestern part of North Carolina and does an excellent job. She goes unchallenged because she does a wonderful job and the people love her.
Yeah.
Right? So if I lived in her district, I would be like, woo, feel no motivation
Right.
to challenge her
Yeah,
because
yeah.
she's wonderful.
Exactly.
And she's not perfect. And I don't expect my representatives to be perfect because they're human beings. I have an understanding there's no such thing as a perfect human being, so I can't expect perfection. And when I say that, I mean, I don't expect to agree on every single topic 100% with anyone.
yeah, that
right?
doesn't exist.
Right. And
But that's
for
a
some
beautiful
reason,
thing.
yeah.
Well, but that's
know?
communist. It's like one way or the other way. The reason why we are the greatest nation is because we have Democrats, Republicans, we have parties. A one-party system, if you want to be socialist or communist, please, there's places you can go to. We'll
Yeah.
buy you a
Well,
first-class ticket. But we are this great nation because we collaborate. And that's what I tell people because they're like, you're running in a 70% Democrat, voting. It doesn't matter. Good Democrats feel like they've been lied to, right? Because good Democrats
We saw
vote,
that in Virginia with the governor.
right? And so it's not like they're bad people voting for a corrupt system. No, they're voting for what the Democratic platform was built on. And what's unfortunate is that the communists took over that party. They're not Democrats. This isn't a fight between Democrats and Republicans. They want us to think that, but it's not. It's a fight like global elites against we the people. And we the people, if we love our freedom and if we love our kids, speaking of education, if there's nothing else that's important, if you just need one reason to want to get involved, education should be enough. Right. Because education, literally, I just totally digress, because education to me is number one, and people don't understand. They're like, well, you don't have kids, Adina, why do you care so much? Because I have a small business and I'm going to need employees, because it doesn't have to be self-interest.
You care about humanity.
Because
Right.
I care about the fact that these kids are being tortured and I know what it's like, and so it's like I feel like our nation has gone away from, and again, it's because of the education system that's been corrupted for so many years, but we forgot what America was. America is not self-interest. Look at the great leaders, James A. Garfield, Abraham Lincoln. The things they didn't do them out of self-interest. And that's why we're such a great nation, because we do things that we see as, an opportunity to help or as a need, and we go and help it and we do it. And that's why we've built the greatest nation.
Yeah.
Other countries do things on self-interest, and that's why they failed.
Our founding fathers, they were serving selflessly, right?
Exactly.
Selfless service. It's a very much a military virtue, that we will serve and put ourselves aside.
Right.
It's very much a thing. And, we have the lowest number in history of veterans in the House of Representatives.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
Really? But we have the highest running, right?
Right now,
There's
potentially.
quite a few.
Yeah, there's well over 40 GWAT
Wow.
veterans running. And of course, the skepticism is, well, won't you guys just take us into more war? Absolutely not.
But what they will do is probably, why would any Democrat want to corrupt the elections when you've got veterans running?
Right.
Why would you want to do that?
More so,
They know the cost of war. They're not going to.
we're done.
And you know what it's
having
like to
American
fight for
boys
freedom,
and girls
Yeah.
die in lands over nothing, right? For what? Why are we going to war? What for?
The
For
sacrifice
what?
there.
What are we getting? What are we gaining? What do you want to send me and Marines and young troopers? Why are you jumping Rangers into this place? What are we doing it for?
Right.
What is the desired outcome? Toppling a bad regime. Okay. Well, we've done that. We did it to the Taliban. We did it to Saddam. We did it to Gaddafi. And then what? Well,
What's the goal?
We created worse enemies is what
Right.
we did. At least dictators are predictable and manageable because they care about one thing, themselves.
Right. I mean,
Dictators.
they oppress
So-
their people, and that's unfortunate, but
Here's
it's
one.
They
that's not-
rarely in this day and age try to expand their borders.
Right.
They just take their own
Dictator.
thing, right? So it's frustrating to us, as I talk to guys like Jay Collins, Eli Crane, guys that are, soft guys, and we we joke about it when we get elected, we'll be the JTF, the Joint Task Force, counter to the squad. But the reality is we are getting friction, pushback from even the GOPs. Well, why? Because they know we're not going to bend over or lay down to even the GOP. We're not just going to fall in line.
Wow.
So it's a threat to the entire establishment because we've all heard the term, right? We talk about two parties, but most people are saying what? They're two wings on the same bird these days.
And they know that vets are anti-war, essentially.
Right.
And,
we tend to be very anti-war.
Yeah.
Unless you're a colonel trying to get promoted to general, we call them politicians.
Exactly.
I would tell you this, there are very, very few colonels and generals in the United States military today that are not completely corrupt, seeking a position in a company, seeking a position
money and
in
power.
Government. Right. And that is horrible. That careerism in the military has destroyed our military. We have no leadership. These guys are cowards and spineless human beings. We see it, with our Joint Chiefs of Staff and so on and so forth. Those of us, when I said, hey, you know what? If we're going to stop this perpetual cycle of war, and where are we at right now? It looks like all these warmongers are trying to take us into Ukraine. Save Ukraine. They're not a democracy. They never were. Here's a thing, right? It is quite possible to detest Putin, but also recognize the fact that the Ukraine and their president was just as corrupt.
Exactly.
We helped with that coup in 2014.
Right.
And Zelensky has silenced his opposition media outlets.
Right.
It's not a democracy.
Right. He imprisoned his opposition.
Yeah.
And
we've seen
so
plans.
frustrating.
It is frustrating because, right, like we have given the Ukraine hundreds of millions of dollars every year for over a decade. What did they do with it? Did they not prepare better for what we knew was coming?
Eventually, you've got to take care of yourself.
Right.
Well, exactly. And that's the thing, like with Zelensky, like the bill the 1.5 trillion. What are we sending all these billions of dollars to Ukraine for? I want the people there to go live on their Instagram to show me the money that they got it, because it's not going to them. That's the whole problem. But wait, I do want to say one thing. Thank you for your service, one. And two, wait, I just lost my train of thought because you shook your head. What the heck?
Well, I don't. I'm not the veteran that will ever be like, thank me for my service. No, I'm not.
But
that
I like
guy.
to do that.
I
but
made a choice. I'm an accountable adult who made a choice to serve our nation.
I know.
I joke that I wasn't making good grades at NC State. Right, I was
Is it a
making
joke,
pretty good grades. I was, they weren't awesome by any means. I was not a straight A student.
I can relate.
They reflected my grades in high school.
So you didn't get brainwashed?
So my grades were okay. The reality was I could not afford to continue to go to school. My father was paying for my older sister, my younger sister, to go to college, and I wanted them to be successful because what I really wanted from the time I was this big was to serve in the United States Army and wear one of those funny green hats, become a Green Beret.
That's so
and
funny.
so to
and
me,
go through hell to do it.
It was an opportunity. It's an honor to serve this nation. It's an honor to have served with the fantastic men and women that I've served with throughout my career in both the Army and the intelligence services. So when people thank me for my service, I'm like, there's no thanks required. I appreciated the opportunity. I got to live one amazing life and do some of the coolest, most fantastic things.
But here's
because of our military and how awesome the men and women in the military are.
But see, I think people need to know that even if you're humble like Tony and you love what you do, you are humble. But look, like we need to thank our military. Like we need to thank our veterans. And I remembered my thought. My thought is, like, you see what's happened to our military, and it's so sad. Like, I do not trust our military to protect us, our borders, or, you know what, whatever, go to Ukraine. Like, you're not going to protect us here. What's going to save this nation is veterans, because the veterans know what it's like to really go to war. They know what it's like to put your life on the line. Our military right now is so weak. I feel bad for them going anywhere, whatever. But I feel like our veterans are going to be the ones saving us.
I would just emphasize the leadership.
They've been weakened.
That's not to say anything about the men and women who are.
No, I love our military, but unfortunately, the ones that are great are leaving because they're not getting vaccinated.
Well, that's the truth.
So the ones that are staying are weak, and I don't unless they show me that they have a spine right now. Like I just don't, I do love our military, but
the foundational principle of military leadership can be found in the first chapter of the Ranger Handbook. You can look up the Ranger Handbook, pull it up, first chapter. And it's, of course, the first page talks about Rogers Rangers and those principles and it's some pretty amazing stuff. But then the most important thing to describe a good leader is right there in the first chapter. And it says the leader, the patrol leader, the mission commander, whatever, the leader, the CEO, the representative, the president, insert whatever title of the position being represented into that sentence, and you get is responsible for everything that does and does not happen. Everything that does and does not happen, whether it's good or bad, the accountability, the responsibility, the responsible entity is the leader. So I've always led like that. If there was something good that happened on the team, it was the team's accord. It's not for me, right? I have to facilitate all the training to make sure we don't make mistakes, right? Because in this line of work, a lot of people say, well, you learn from your failures. Pardon me. Yeah, in my line of work, we weren't quite afforded that luxury, right? We better make our mistakes in training. But if something bad happened, one of my guys made a mistake or did something stupid, right? Well, it's my responsibility. So, a good example, and I think the overwhelming majority of our current political leadership, because who is drawn to politics? Not strong men and women. It's just kind of one of those industries that attract spineless cowards.
Narcissists.
Right.
Yeah.
Who are just looking for more because they're not confident in their own skin. They're not self-confident. They're not, somebody described me as cocky. And I'm like,
what else are we going to do?
I'm not cocky.
Go into politics.
I am confident. I'm self-aware. I'm very well aware of what
value.
I don't know,
right.
But I am confident in what I do know, and I'm more importantly very comfortable in my own skin.
Yeah.
And with what you don't know, right. I'm always willing to learn and accept that I make
wish
mistakes.
more politicians would say they don't know. Because
right. You don't have to know everything, it's okay. Yeah. And when you realize you don't know something, that's when you can get help. But I do want to clarify the one thing on the military. So I love our military. I respect them greatly, even in times like this. However, I feel like when I think about a nation becoming communist, I think about the military, turning against the people. And right now, I don't feel like our military is standing up for us, because I feel like if they did, then maybe we would have a chance at, and even the great ones that are leaving, right? They're getting discharged, or it's like, at what point do we fix that, and how do we turn it where it is for the people and they're not being, discharged, it's just crazy. It's like you're a criminal, same thing. You don't get vaccinated, you get discharged, and you're...
it's hard as a military member, right? You only have so much influence.
And you take direction, that's your job.
Right. So, your average military member getting out, she is going to go get a job and work hard to take care of their family and go mind their own business, right? That's what conservatives tend to do. And probably... mostly liberals too. They just want to mind their own business.
We mostly all want to do that,
right?
And now we can't mind our own business anymore.
not have a government trying to impose its agenda. It's supposed to be the other way around.
Right.
The government supports the people's agenda, and that's
how
just
do we
simply
turn
not
it back?
what happens. Well,
by people like y'all.
Well,
exactly.
We're going to have to get involved.
Yeah.
We have to get involved, right? The average person is going to have to carve out some time out of their very busy schedule, and I get it, 2-3 kids. Man, I look back and wonder how in the heck my mom and dad managed 3 youngins, and that was before.
Can you imagine now?
Right,
I've got
way
one,
before.
and I don't know how people do it with more than one.
But the reality is, we're going to have to start carving out some time to get involved, and if we don't, we're just going to keep getting the same things. We're going to have the same type of people elected, and so on and so
and for
forth.
all the time that you think about education, the kids that are the generation, the millennials, right? And everything after that, they go to school for 13 years, 7 hours a day. And that's how much they're literally conditioned to be anti-America and for CRT. And I feel like the one way to fix it, I kid around and say CRT, but really we need to restore our Constitution. And that's why Constitution restoration training, I feel like our public schools, first of all, they're supposed to teach the Constitution on Constitution Day. If they get federal funding, they are required to. It's not an option, and they're not even doing that. But I feel like they
never
need
taught the Constitution
to know.
in high school.
Look, if you know your rights as a student, the school is scared that they're going to lose their power, right? So it's a power trip. But you know what? You are working for the people. You are teaching. So it's like, instead of wanting the kids and the students to not be smart and to just be suppressed, and then you have this process for them, instead, you need to teach them their rights and their powers, because if the kids knew their powers, do you think they would wear a mask? They would stand up for what's right, but they don't know the Constitution. Yeah. And if we don't know the Constitution, none of this matters. Like,
the Constitution is a 10-minute read.
Seriously.
It really is.
I have a pocket Constitution in my bag with me all the time, and I take it out, and people are like, that's it? And I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
Seriously, you've never seen one?
Well, because that one high school civics class, they didn't even talk about the Constitution.
No.
And that was, for me, 30 years ago.
And they're required to every year.
Well, look, y'all, I could do this forever, but I know we have a hard stop, and I want to give you both the opportunity in closing here to, because ultimately you're going to go do, hopefully, both of you, really shitty jobs, and you had way better lives than what you're signing up for, and you're going to represent your districts, the people in your district. So in closing, I want to give each of you an opportunity to just briefly say, what are you going to do for those people? Why should they give a damn about your candidacy and elect you?
Yeah, you first, because I want to talk about the event.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Sorry. I keep kicking Adina under the table.
Yeah.
It's okay. I'm just like, wakes me up.
I tell people there are 3 things I will reference on anything, any issue, any vote, any bill that I have to look at and consider whether or not I will sign it. And it's the 10 Commandments, the Constitution, and the constituents. What else do I need to represent? And that's why I'm so adamant when I say and make sure and I accentuate the word representative. I'm not running for Congress. I do not want to be a congressperson. It's in none of my campaigning. It's in none of my branding. From the get-go, representative. I'm running to represent my friends and families and neighbors. When the districts changed and encompassed where I grew up in Pamlico County, my hometown, my stomping grounds of New Bern and Greenville, Little Washington, Chakawinity, for folks who don't even know where that is on the map, my girlfriend's hometown, Morehead City, Emerald Isle, Atlantic Beach, all these places that I ran around as a kid and have friends and, like I said, family and neighbors there. When they said these districts changed, I was like, wow, this is an amazing opportunity. Because initially, like I said, I was going to run to represent Fort Bragg, which is, Cumberland County and those surrounding counties, which is also friends and family, but not my roots.
Right.
Not where I was, raised. So I was really excited about it. But that's it. That's how I make things better, by always referencing the 10 Commandments, the Bible, our Constitution. The Constitution is not toilet paper. And our folks on Capitol Hill need to be told that, need to be shown that. They swear an oath. They put their hand on the Bible and swear an oath to protect the Constitution. Not our nation and not the flag, the Constitution, that piece of paper, because the nation, we won't have this nation without that Constitution. And the flag represents that nation that is founded around that Constitution.
And most of them probably couldn't tell you what their constituents want.
Not a clue. Not a clue. You can email most of your representatives, right? We certainly have this problem, especially military members. They email asking for help and get nothing. Not even a go F yourself.
Thank you for your email.
Yeah, and they might be like, thank you for your email, or a staffer answers an auto reply. No help whatsoever. And in most cases, nothing. No reply whatsoever. And let's face it, our representatives work fewer days in D.C. than, come on, man, they have time. They have time.
And they should be working in their districts.
No.
Not
Actually,
DC.
they have fundraising.
Right.
They need time to fundraise.
Oh, that's right.
Well,
every 2 years.
Yeah. Well, that's the election cycle, right? Yeah. They've got 1 year to kind of do their job, and then they got to get back out there and fundraise so they can make sure they secure themselves on the right, committees and So yeah.
Boom. I love it. 10 Commandments, Constitution, your constituents.
Yeah. I'm a military guy. It is near and dear to my heart. The fact that we have Marines and sailors on Camp Lejeune living in barracks that are far worse than most of your inner city projects in Chicago, right? That the fact that the representative has never visited those things, that he only goes to the headquarters with generals and stuff like that for dog and pony shows. Yeah, that's not me. My uncle was a farmer. I know that right now he's paying 4 times the amount he did just a year and a half ago for fertilizer, right? Fertilizer, definitely, and all the things that are farming and manufacturing and hard laborious jobs, that is Eastern North Carolina, is very dependent upon fuel costs, directly dependent upon. And then, of course, my father owned a seafood company, sound packing company. So those 3 things are the major things there. Of course, we got PCS phosphate. We've got the Coast Guard station up in Elizabeth City, that Coast Guard Air Station.
Good times there.
These are all things that are so important. Cherry Point, right? So many civilians work to support that air wing over there. And they have no representation. That's just a fact. We have a representative that was a doctor that falls in line into Big Pharma. Vidant. Yeah, Vidant is a huge contributor to his campaign. Vidant bought out his practice, right? There's no such thing as a coincidence.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, instead of trying to get on the Armed Forces Committee or the Veterans Affairs Committee, like he promised he would, right? Or how about the Agriculture Committee? Things that actually matter to this district. That's what I want. And I'll tell you, I promise that I will only do 4 terms. That's all you can get from me. And I promise I will find myself seated at the table at the Agriculture Committee and the Armed Services Committee.
All my buddies in Elizabeth City at the base, the Coast Guard base, all y'all, I know you listen to this show. You need to get out and vote in the primary and support this man, because I can tell you I definitely want him representing the district where my family lives. So
thanks, man.
Adina?
And make sure you're registered correctly.
Yes,
Because I feel like
many
people
get
don't
on
realize
that shit,
it.
y'all.
You've got till April the 25th to register or change your party affiliation if need be to vote in this primary.
Yeah, because I feel like a lot of people don't vote in the primary. They don't realize
A lot
it.
don't.
Like, we need... This is probably the most important primary election that we'll have in history, really, like for a long time to see come. And it's the election that's going to either save our nation or not. I mean, it just truly is. Like, if we don't want, like James A. Garfield said, we the people get to choose who we want representing us, the people. And if we want a corrupt and evil government, then we get to choose that. And if we don't, then we have to stand up and show up. I have been committed to the capital city district since day one. I didn't wait to see. I didn't play the political game to see who else is going to jump in. That didn't matter to me. I knew that I was committed and I was running because my office is in the middle of Fayetteville Street, downtown in the capital city, and it looks like a war zone. I mean, I call it the spine of our city, aka war zone. And there's no American flags. I looked out of my window every day and I'm like, what is going on? Our city's getting destroyed. This is the most important city to me in this state. It's our capital city and we don't care about it. So what makes me think we care about anything else in our state, right? Like, the governor's office is not far from where I can look out my window. And so I have been committed to that district, regardless of what numbers changed, what lines changed. I was going into a losing fight from the get-go, but I knew we would win if we, the people, came together. And so I say, let's party together. Forget the parties. Let's be America first. I challenge the first Democrat to say they're an America first Democrat. I mean, like, it's true, though. If you love your freedom, if you love your nation, I will say I have Democrats supporting me. I have Republicans supporting me. I have small business owners. When you take the part, look, nobody's branded with a party, right? Like, there's core values that we all have, and we are that party, right? Like, we affiliate with it. But at the end of the day, there's small business owners, there's moms and dads, there's immigrants, it doesn't matter. Like, both sides have both, right? And so because of that, we need to put parties aside, we need to party together, and we need to realize, in order for us to save our economy is at the top for me. I'm a CFO by trade. All I've looked at my whole life is budgets, spending bills, credit memos, you name it, leverage. And when I see what's happening in our nation, I realize, like, we need a representative representing the most important district in our state that understands what it will take to save our economy. Because if we're getting access. I just looked at Deborah's spending that she's going to use out of the 1.5 trillion. It makes me sick because the infrastructure, like the things that are getting applied in Wake County, we become the example for the rest of the state. And I followed the money, so I can say that from looking at this information. And the decisions that are being made in Wake County is for this money to be applied in all the wrong places. So I'm committed that saving the economy is what needs to be at the forefront, because if we don't save our economy, we don't need to talk about freedom, because freedom is gone, right? If we talk about money and power, well, money and power, money is being fed into piggy banks that are the power of these crooks, right? And so that's all they have is the money that's feeding their power. And once we strip that away from them and we apply the money where it needs to, we then can take our freedom back. Right now, we don't have freedom. We don't have the American freedom that we used to and that we deserve it, freedom and liberty. We don't have it. None of us can say that you don't, like I get kicked out of places all the time still for the mask. And it's like, I've never suffocated myself.
Yeah, man.
I mean, I've never suffocated myself, so why would I start now?
Rural North Carolina, where I'm at, we never wore masks in the first place.
Here we did.
Right?
I got kicked out of Verizon a few weeks ago. I'm like, wait a minute. I got kicked out of the DMV like a week and a half ago. I'm like, this is ludicrous. And you walk into the DMV in Wake County, and the language on the front is in Chinese. I'm not even kidding you. I took a picture of it. I was like, I don't even know what like country I'm in anymore. You know, like what is this? Welcome to China. Hi, I'm here to renew my license.
That's an immigrant,
right?
From a communist country talking.
Remind the people this is an immigrant talking,
and build the border. Anyways, so the economy. If we don't save our economy, we don't have our freedom. Period. And so my commitment is that I'm going to go in and I'm going to hold these, people, politicians accountable. We need to hold them accountable. We need to save our economy. By doing that, we're going to restore our freedom, and we're going to restore it by saving and helping our parents in the education system. Our public education system is sold. Like, it's literally like, here's the education system and the kids, and here's Joe. Like, literally, we've sold it to the government through ESSER funds. And again, I always follow the money. And it's unfortunate that money is the reason for all of this, right? Money is the root of all evil if you let it be. And we've let that happen. And so because money has allowed what should be good to be sold for the bad, right? We put people in power that don't deserve it. And so if we can go into the education system and we can, introduce CRT, like introduce the Constitution Restoration Training. If you look at the CRT hand symbol, it's the same as the Chinese communist, the fist. So, like, what does that tell you? They're literally teaching communism from the inside out, like Joe says, from the middle in and out, whatever. And so my priorities, and I'm actively in this, is our economy, our freedom, and our education. And I'm committed that I will, fight for all those things. I'm currently at the Wake County School Board meetings. I'm involved in, holding these people to the fire as much as I could. I mean, our literally legislative building is up the road from my office. I'm in there all the time. And all I ever think about is...
But they love seeing you walk in.
But wait, every time I walk in, I sit there and I'm like, we have House majority. Why are we having such a hard time passing all these things? We don't need the Democrats to vote on our side. We just need our Republicans to not be shady. And if they weren't, then hey, we would have the Free Smiles Act. And so I literally it's just beyond me what's happening. And it's beyond me that somebody like me and somebody like Tony, and actually shame on us that we've not, all been involved as much as we should have. But it's shameful to see the advantage that our government has taken of us, the people, because we let it. Yeah. And so
specifically, when you say government, it's not a soulless thing. The government are people that we elected, right?
The government is us,
right?
We like it or
what
not.
the government's made up of now.
When we say government, right? I've tried really hard to quit saying government and start saying our representatives, our senators. Those are people, right? The government is not this automatic monster robot thing.
The government is what make it.
It is human beings up there that we sent there. They're filling their jobs.
We didn't send all of them,
right? Well,
she's
being
adamant about that.
Staff, I just want you to know that we didn't send Joe.
and even worse, right? The staffers. They don't have term limits. Staffers jump from one representative, one senator to the next, right? And they carry on that legacy of corruption even more so.
There is a real deep state. Whether people want to stigmatize that phrase because it's a conspiracy theory.
It's not a conspiracy theory. It's the way our system has developed.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't say that it's rigged. it developed, morphed, and filled a space that our representatives allowed it to.
And we allowed it to as well. So that's my commitment to the people, right? And then on the flip side, I say, because I am a business person running and I'm just a regular citizen, I also need the citizens to step up and for their commitment, yes, we need donations. I also realize that there's a lot of issues with campaign financing. But in order for us to get into the seat and to fix these issues, we need to play on the same field as they are, right, Tony?
Sure.
Yeah, I asked Tony a lot because that's it was very difficult for me to wrap my mind around that. But it's like, okay, in order for us to be able to defeat these evil people, we need to play on their field to a certain extent and do it smart so that we can hold them accountable when we're there. So, I mean, we need donations. We need volunteers. Our campaign is very grassroots. So I tell people, like, if we can get more boots on the ground, that means less dollars spent on the things that we need to. I'm committed to transparency. So anyone that donates, I know we've maybe not been aware of the fact that the information's public. It doesn't matter. I have a binder in my office and I will be printing out our budget and everything that's spent. And every donor of mine is going to have a copy of that so that everybody knows where the money's spent. I'm committed to not taking advantage of what the citizens are giving. But in order for us to win, we need volunteers. We need donations. And, we need people to show up to our event that's coming up, which you're going to be a part of as well on April 9th. Oh, yeah. It's called We the People, North Carolina. But yeah, so April 9th, you can find tickets on eventbrite.com, but all of our social medias has it. Mm-hmm. All of our social medias almost has the link. And yeah,
I thought she was talking about me for a second.
You sound like a politician.
It's coming.
But yeah, so you can find our social medias, but I have it on my website too. And if anyone wants to know more on our campaign and the things we're doing, you can go to www.adinaforcongress.com, and you can find me on social media just by typing Adina for Congress for most of them. I'm not on all the social media.
The number 4 in your social media, right? It's
yes.
Not the word.
Yeah, and on the website is the word. Yeah. Try to confuse people.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Cool. Of course, mine is TonyCowden.com, and then Instagram is Tony_Cowden_4NC, the number 4. And then my personal Facebook page is Tony Cowden, as well as my campaign page. It is also Tony Cowden. And yeah, Dina's absolutely right. The fundraising piece, it's ugly. I hate it. I hate asking people for money. I've never done it before.
Me either.
But the reality is, we have to have it. And for us to get to DC to enact and affect campaign finance reform, we need some help.
And I want to say one other thing.
Say it.
Social media is great for awareness, but let's not allow it to distract us from our mission. In order for us to create the history that we want to see for generations to come, we have to we have to act. We can't just wait and just post things and complain. Let's stop getting distracted. Let's show up and let's create the change that we want to see happen. Because I am 100% confident that if we fight, we win. Yeah. But if we don't fight, we already lost.
That's funny you say that. I just want to add to that really quick, and then I know y'all got to get on the road. So I call it activist LARPing. People on social media think they're doing something. It's look, I got to do the social media thing.
Right. Yeah, it's a part of it.
But I do this as well and other stuff. It's like you guys got to take action. You got to vote. You got to get out and support people.
You can't just expect it to change.
If you talk to social media marketing folks, right, their entire
call them Marxist.
No. If you're trying to convert interactions on social to business. Right? Mm-hmm. So if someone types something in a comment, right, and it doesn't translate or transfer or convert into action, something actionable, something tangible, then it's just words. No different than the words you might, if you were a crappy person and in the bathroom you scratch some words onto a bathroom skull. Mm-hmm. That it's no different. A comment on social media is not action. They're words, and there's that old saying, "Words, not deeds." Yep. Right? Of course, that is Jay Collins' campaign slogan as well. Green Beret running in Florida, former 7th group guy, amazing guy, great friend of mine.
Support him.
Yeah. So, but my, free plug there
Digress.
for Jay.
Yeah.
For Jay. But the reality is, right, this social media thing,
Yeah.
just because you type a comment, it's not real. And I think a lot of the younger generation almost feels that way. You know, it doesn't convert to something.
I like to say, how's all the change that you created with those black squares going?
Nothing.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Right?
You
Yeah.
need to be in the community and you need to do stuff.
Yeah.
Let's stop getting distracted.
Amen.
Thank
Well,
you
thank
so
you all
much.
so much.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Hey,
having
look,
us.
this is an absolute honor and privilege for me.
No, thank you.
The district I grew up in, the district I went to college in, like, I'm stoked,
The
and
best
I'll
of
do
both
everything I
worlds.
can to support y'all.
Oh, yeah.
Like Adina said, everybody come out to the event on the 9th,
Right.
April,
We'll see you
downtown
there.
Raleigh. Tony Cowden, Adina Safta, thank you all so much. Listeners, until next time, keep your minds free.
Thank you.
Thank you.